All right. Hello and welcome back to View from the Han. I'm Nathan Simpson, and this video is going to be about the basic rules before you fly a drone in South Korea. So let me just get my media up here. Okay, so before you fly, I mentioned that Korea has some special challenges in my last video, and so you have to do a little bit more work to just be allowed to fly. And also the basic rules are in Korean, so it's a little harder to understand exactly what's needed. But I've tried to translate and summarize a little bit of what you need to know before you can start. And just as in my last video, just a disclaimer, I'm not a licensed pilot. This is more for just a little bit of education. And if you really want to make sure you're following all the rules, I recommend you actually take the license test. It's going to be in Korean, so it'll be challenging, but I recommend you take it. Um, but yeah, this is not officially from the Korean government. This is just my attempt at trying to make some of these things a little easier to understand for the average person. So please do your own research and check for yourself to make sure you're following all the rules. Okay, so there's going to be three basic things I'm going to talk about tonight. First will be my pointer. First, we're going to talk about registration, then authorization, and some basic rules and things you need to remember just before you fly pretty much anywhere, but here too. So registration and the associated penalties. You can see here there's three categories. First is 2 kilograms or more. Most people will not fly this and will not have to worry about this at all unless you're operating a business usually. But you can see they have to do everything. They have to notify the government about any changes to the drone and any alterations. They have to tell that to the government. You have to get a registration number, whether you're doing it for business or not, and you need a pilot certificate to fly it, and you have to abide by general rules. 250 grams to 2 kilograms. Well, that's almost all of the normal just sort of hobby drones or photography drones are in there. And for those, if you're just doing it non-commercially, you can get away with just having your pilot certificate and abiding by the general rules for the registration part. But if you're flying commercially, you have to do everything. And the same goes with the 250 grams level, but you don't need a pilot certificate to fly that. And you don't have to register the drone. And I even tried to register my small drone, and they said, no, you can't. Not even you don't have to, but you can't. So that I thought that was interesting. I thought I want to try and register it and see if they'll let me register it, but they said no, it's not in the right category, so you don't register that. And you don't need a license, but I think it's good to have this going through this education and getting it regardless of what size of drone you have. And so you can see there's some penalties if you don't follow these rules. Hopefully you won't have to worry about that. Let's just have a look at some of the categories of drones and which drones fit in which category. So we've got something 2 kilograms or more. You're basically looking at commercial drones or a very expensive consumer drone like the DJI Inspire 2. And this is definitely a commercial drone. I think this is one of the newer Matrice drones. It's used for surveying work and search and rescue and stuff. But you can see even some professional drones, they don't fit in that category. The Phantom 4 and the Phantom 4 RTK can do some serious professional work, and even the DJI Mavic 3 is used for a lot of professional work, and there's a Mavic 3 Enterprise that'll probably be in this weight class, and you won't have to do some of this extra steps for that one. And then, of course, we've got this new category that these drones are designed basically to fit under the rules that apply to most drones, the 250 gram rule. So we've got like the Mini, DJI Mini 2, or I think it's Autel something, Mini something. So they're under that. They're under that weight limit. Okay, so authorization is something where you actually have to request permission to fly from the government. So let's look at where and when you might need to do that. Um, 25 kilograms or more, um, you actually have to get a safety inspection from the government to fly your drone. And you also need authorization to fly in a flight limited area. So a limited area, from my understanding, is just an area where the number of drones and the amount of air traffic that can happen in that area is limited. So you have to request permission to fly there just based on the nature of that space. Things under 25 kilograms, you don't have to worry about that, is my impression. Again, this was a little bit vague to me. These are all in Korean legal terms, and when I learned it, it felt a little vague to me as a non-native Korean speaker. And you can see prohibited flight area. I talked about that a little bit in my last video. These are mostly for national security purposes or safety purposes of the general public. You're not allowed to fly there like near the Blue House or near government offices. There's a kind of debate, or there was a debate, I'm not sure if it got resolved, between the Korean Transportation Safety Authority and the security agencies who both sort of control this aspect of the law, whether you needed to get permission or whether you couldn't even get permission to fly there. I'm not sure if that got resolved. I'm curious if there's any Korean speakers who know about this particular issue, because I'm really curious. There's some places I'd like to fly in some of those areas just because it's got cool mountains or something that, make a cool Seoul cityscape picture or video. You could do that if you could get permission to fly there. And controlled airspace, that is basically like airports. So anywhere near an airport or places where planes are going to take off and land, or maybe places that, basically are being monitored by air traffic control agencies or other, maybe military agencies. Then you have to be careful about that. So you're going to need some flight authorization to fly in these two areas, regardless of your drone weight. And regardless of your drone weight, you'll also have to get authorization to fly 150 meters above ground level. So above ground level means that, literally that, above ground level. So you start, and maybe I've confused these terms. I'm sure some pilot certified person will correct me on the usage of altitude versus above ground level. I think that's also in the in the training program I took, but it was all in Korean, so I'm still a little fuzzy on it. But above ground level is essentially if you're on a mountain and the mountain is 500 meters tall, you can still fly 150 meters above that mountain because the mountain is considered the ground. And this, I think, also applies to structures like bridges or even tall buildings. I'm not really sure exactly in the Korean regulations how it works, but just in general, it's the understanding of above ground level from the English courses I took was above the ground. If the ground is a tall mountain, then it's 150 meters above the tall mountain. If it's basically the ocean, then it's 150 meters above the ocean. So whatever is the lowest point that an airplane would have to fly over to get where it's going is above ground level. It's not that difficult of a concept to understand. And I think in some places there's some exceptions to this, but that would be something that if you really want to learn in detail, you should take the licensing course and see what the Korean licensing is, if you really want to be super careful about it. Also, just note that national parks are, they have their own jurisdiction for certain things because of they're trying to preserve nature. So you might also need some extra authorization to fly in a national park, even if it's not controlled airspace or a prohibited flight area, or above ground level. You still might get in trouble with the park service for flying your drone because it could disturb wildlife. I think some of the smaller drones now, probably not too disturbing of wildlife. My drone's pretty quiet, actually, once you fly it far away. But birds do get upset by drones sometimes, and sometimes birds will even attack your drone if you're bothering them. And their drones, the small drones, I'm sure large birds could take them out of the air if they wanted to. So Yeah, that's another thing you have to consider. Just another tip. Be careful of birds while you're flying your drone. Okay, basic rules. Well, I just took this from an app, the Korean app for flying your drone. And first is flight time before sunrise or after sunset is prohibited without special authorization. So at nighttime, you can't fly your drone unless you get special permission. 2 is a flight location. So check to make sure you have all your uh, airspace. The airspace is okay to fly there. Look around to see, are there power lines, giant bridges that something that might affect the signal for your drone. Yeah, just look around and check your area to see what's going on there before you just decide to put something in the air, and see what obstacles you'll have to deal with, and think about what problems might happen if you try and fly your drone into a certain area before you fly there. Okay, again, yep, under 150 meters unless otherwise authorized. And flight path, you should be able to see your drone. If you can't see it, you're technically not flying according to the rules. And that means if you're flying FPV and you're wearing goggles, there should be somebody else watching your drone. And maybe in the future, I wonder if they'll have FPV goggles with augmented reality where you can see both your drone and what your drone shows through the goggles. That would be cool, having a drone camera view and then the goggles camera view. But as of yet, we don't have that, so you might need someone to observe your drone while you're flying FPV. And a drone etiquette, so don't fly over giant crowds of people. This is also part of the law. You're not supposed to fly over, I think, emergency services, large crowds of people. Like if there's special events going on, you basically can't fly over those unless you get special permission. Yeah, that's just generally, if it falls out of the sky, you don't want it to fall on someone. So yeah, that's not good if that happens. So try not to fly over people. You can sort of fly beside and above people, and you can still get some pretty cool views, but don't fly over them. Do not operate the drone under the influence of drugs or alcohol. That's pretty obvious. You wouldn't drive a car under the influence of drugs or alcohol, and the car is not in the air, so why would you fly an aircraft under the influence of drugs or alcohol? And dropping things from the drone is also prohibited. That's dangerous. People have used drones to do certain illegal things, and if you've been watching the news, you might understand what I'm talking about. But just generally, don't drop stuff from your drone. That's just unsafe. If it falls on someone, it could hurt them. It's a bad idea, but it's also illegal. And make sure you have the flight authorization like I talked about before. And I think in my next video, I'll talk about the website where you go to do that and how to get that done. It's all in Korean. It's a little complicated. You might get rejected a couple times before you get it and understand how it works. But that's okay. It's a learning process, and you'll probably be able to figure it out eventually. Last is, yeah, have an equipment and pre-flight checklist. So check your drone. Is it in good shape to fly? Is everything charged? Check the settings, because maybe you don't want your return to home height to be 150 meters, depending on where you're flying. Maybe it would waste a lot of battery and get your drone in some dangerous spots to do that. So yeah, maybe you could do it less than that. Just make sure you set all the settings ahead of time before you take off. Look around and see what's going on in your area. Obstacles, like I said before. And all these are just taken from the drone app, which is very helpful for understanding where you can fly. So this helpful app is called Dronefly, and let's see if I can get it to play my video. Okay, there we go. So if you just search in the App Store, there is an Android version, I think, and I'll put links to this in the description, as well as links to my little graphics that I had for basic rules and authorization. But there you can see the app. It's called Dronefly, and you can see that there's Seoul and all the prohibited areas, and the DMZ is there. You can't fly there. Yeah. And but the nice thing about this app, aside from seeing all the different restricted places, is you can see recommended places, cool places you might want to go and fly your drone. And if you go into this little side menu, you can see all the rules that I basically just translated. That last slide before this had all those rules. And if we zoom out a little bit on the map, you can actually see that, yeah, Korea has, oh yeah, here's some of the cool little recommended places. You can see little dots like that showing recommended places. And that one is a new place that you might want to try flying. And you can see little stars are things that are really, people might want to fly there. But look at all of Korea. You can see all these little red and orange circles are places that you can't fly. And you can see there Sejong City also has some government offices, so you don't really want to fly there either. But this app is pretty useful. It also has at the bottom, it'll show you the temperature, it'll show you the wind speed, and direction, I think. Does it have the direction? It doesn't have direction there. But there are some other apps you can get that'll actually even tell you the direction and different wind speeds at different altitudes for your area. Anyway, I'll talk a little bit more about apps. So if you think this information has been helpful, or if you have some comments or questions, yeah, just make sure you can click the subscribe button and click the like button. And if you have any questions about something that I talked about in the video, or if there's some topics that you want me to talk about or want to discuss in the video, yeah, leave a comment, ask some questions, and I'll see if I can find information on that and put it in the next video, or a video that matches that topic. All right, that's all for now. So I'll see you in the next video.